Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. You have to excuse the wind. Sounds like the roof's going to come off any minute. Which is, it's not impossible. We shall see. Now this, I've got 2 orders, 2 lots of 2, and I did suggest that it might be an idea to combine them into one box, but on reflection I doubt if that's possible. With the normal post, which is quite reasonable cost-wise, there's a maximum length, and in addition to that you add the length, the width and the height, and that can't go over a certain value, and there's a weight limit. Now if this order had been doubled up, it might not have gone in this size box and suddenly the postage rockets. So overall in this case it might have been cheaper to send 2 lots of 2. In which case I don't know which 2 this is. It's probably the first 2 I ordered actually, because I ordered them a few days apart. But until we get it out, we don't know what we've got, do we? Now, we should have blooms, but again, no guarantee. Now that's unusual. These are actually wrapped in the cellophane sheet, which may mean that they've come straight to me from the supplier. It does look like I've got all 4 in here, so they did go in. Goodie. Right, now this is Dendrobium formosum, one of the black hair types. Atypical black hair type in fact. I'm hoping I can lift that out through the top with the pot. Are you going to come out? What's stopping you coming out then? Oh, there we go. Right, so that's that one. That really does look like a recent import. Very dirty leaves, but that's just that could be nothing more than rainwater, you know, washing down. So that's that one. Yes, we have got all 4 in here. Next we've got a Miltoniopsis. I don't think this one's got a name. It's got a plant passport. But that doesn't mean it's got a name. That does obviously mean it's able to travel. So that's that one. I'll get this out the cellophane in a minute. As I said, I think these have recently been acquired and. Oops! What on earth was that? Oh, scissors. I was going to say, it sounded like something heavy, didn't it? Heavy. Right, so that's those 2. That was one order, and then these 2 was the other order. And as I seem to be doing rather well with Miltoniopsis recently, I thought we'd get some more, especially as I've got at least one dodgy one that's probably about to be thrown out. Now this is Spectabilis, so a species, large bloomed, and this looks like a very vigorous grower. Large plant again. One more to get out, so I'm just running out of space. What I'll do is I'll unwrap all these off camera and then come back and have a look at the plants as well as the blooms. And then the last one is another Miltonia species. This one, I'll have to wait to get the label out because it's not only a species, it's a particular variety of that species and that gives it a lot better colour. So that's the 4. Okay, so these are all large plants, so they'll be difficult to get the whole plant in shop, but the Dendrobium formosum, this appears in an awful lot of hybrids, this one, and it normally is incorporated because of its size, because the blooms are large. Lovely pristine white with a lovely sort of gold yellow centre to the lip, and a good shape to the bloom. You know, that is a Dendrobium shape. Some people say that at a glance they look very Cattleya-like, and I can see what they mean. But as far as the plant goes, it's in a tiny little pot that won't stand up. It's also bone dry, so it needs a drink, and it has grown this single new growth, which is large, leaved all the way down, and the leaves are absolutely filthy, which I assume is just going to come off. Yeah, it's just it's got wet with dirty water basically, so the leaves need a good clean off, let them breathe again. It might come off with a good spray, but if not, a bit of cotton wool and some clean water, just give them a wipe over. And I don't know how long the blooms will last, because I don't know how long they've been open, but under normal circumstances you're looking at months for this type of orchid. They're very long lasting blooms. I'm not sure they're fragrant, well, certainly not at the moment. So as far as the plant goes, it's had a single cane grow. There's no sign of any new growths at the moment. It's rather a large plant to put on a mount, but that'll have to be thought about. But at the moment it won't even stand up, so I think we'll a clay pot I can chuck it in. That normally helps them stand up a bit better, adds a bit of weight to the base. So that's the Dendrobium. That's what caught my eye, and I won't buy one plant from that supplier simply because of the massive discount on the second and subsequent plants. I think the postage originally on that one was £6, I think, either £5.50 or £6, and then all of these get sent for £2 each, and they're large plants. And to get a plant like that in the post for £2, it's pretty good going. It's part of why I like the supplier, is you don't get ripped off with the flipping postage, which annoys me. I don't mind somebody recovering their costs if that's what it costs, but I know what it flipping costs to send in the UK. So, you know, don't rip people off. You're not supposed to make a profit on the shipping. I know, like if you were a commercial enterprise, like Sarah at Burnham's, you know, somebody's got to pack the plants and buy the boxes and the packing material, because you know, I rely on other people's packing material when I post out, and I don't post very often, you know, once a year maximum normally, and probably not for a long time now. So I save boxes and screwed up newspaper and bubble wrap so that I've already got the materials. They cost me nothing. But if you're the commercial, you know, the business, like now, this box is a standard size from this supplier. They're probably bought in bulk, ready to use, you know, and then they've had their special tape made, which makes their boxes, and their live plants with care stickers. All that has to be paid for, you know. So to put that out for £2, I'm impressed, and I know I'm not getting ripped off. This is also needs a drink. This is dust dry. Right, so this is the species Spectabilis, Miltonia, not Miltoniopsis. Yeah, blooms are large and very attractive. Nice markings, good deep colour. Yeah, so you look at that and you think, right, that's the species. So why the hell has he bought another one? Because the other one is Spectabilis as well, but it's a named variety. So that's the difference. This, as far as a plant is concerned, is good. I don't see any shriveled pseudobulbs anywhere. Note, it's a bit of a climber. Yeah, it's already escaping out of the pot. Yeah, you have to lump, that's how they grow, tough. See, like this one has extended here, and luckily it still managed to get some roots down in. This one's extended and still got some roots down in, but this one's off over the side of the pot. So that's what they do. But 3 good spikes on there, plenty of blooms still to open. Yeah, there is some slight damage on these blooms, but very little. So it's just this one over here really got a bit bent. So, but you know, there's more spikes to come on that, more blooms to come on that spike. So, so that's the species Spectabilis, and that's its traditional colour, although it is variable. And every now and again, like I've said, when you produce a load of seedlings from a species, preferably from 2 separate plants, you get a load of seed, go through all the motions, and coming out the other end, loads of seedlings that you grow on, and eventually you've got a sea of green that starts to bloom. And you look down the line and you think, gotcha, because you get a special one. Sometimes you get quite a few, and it's different. And is it then different enough to get registered and named? And this one was. And you can see the difference. It's the depth of colour. Yeah? So this is Spectabilis, and its variety, I think it's, I'll have to look it up on the thingy, I think it was Morleana. Let's have a look, see. Yeah, so it's Miltonia Spectabilis variety Morleana. It's strange actually, on my invoice it says hybrid orchid plant. No, I don't think so. It's a named variety. So we've got, as far as the plant's concerned, a bit of a climber again, but this is what I like to see. That pseudobulb produced 2 growths, so it can double up in size quicker than pseudobulbs that only ever produce 1 new growth. And many of the Oncidium types, or Oncidium alliance, do only produce 1. So those that are capable of producing 2, you can sort of semi-work out how well you're growing it. Because if you buy it, and I mean if you look here, this pseudobulb here has pushed out this growth and this one. So again, 2. So there's 2 bulbs on there, have both pushed out 2. So there's 4 leads. This one over here didn't bloom. Actually feels a bit wobbly. It feels like it might have been snapped. And it's just held by the sheath. I don't know though. Yeah, because that one's the same. But that produced 2 bulbs, one of which bloomed. This one produced 2, one of which bloomed. So although it's capable of producing 2 leads per bulb, there's no guarantee they're both going to bloom. But the next 2 will. Yeah? So where there was a plant with 2 growths that produced a spike in the past, it's then pushed out 4. Now, we've still only got 2 spikes, but down the line there will be more. And it also now lends itself to being split into 2 pretty good plants, because each plant would have 2 leads on it, which is a replica of what this plant looked like before these new growths came out. So it could be split. Anyway, we've got buds still to open on both spikes, and yeah, very pleased with that. The depth of colour is gorgeous. Velvety looking blooms. Yeah, so pleased with that. Nice plant. Also bone dry, needs a drink. Light as a feather. But both of those look like they're in bark, as does the Dendrobium. This Miltoniopsis, however, is not in bark. God knows what that's in. Dirt. It's probably in the cocoa peat, mixed probably with some cocoa coir. Now what we've got here is an old spike. It's down to its last bloom, so that may not last much longer. Over here we've got a spike with 2 blooms on, one of which is not right, but there is a bud still to open. And then over this side we've got a spike where none of the blooms are open yet, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to come on there. So we'll have some blooms for a while, good plump pseudobulbs, and you take a risk, but quite honestly the Miltoniopsis like to be potted a little bit deeper than your standard Oncidium type. But you take a risk because it can cause rotting. It depends on your media and how soggy they get, and how much airflow you've got and what your temperatures are. But you take a risk. And so I'm just looking. This is a new growth that hasn't bloomed yet here, so we may have another spike to come. Now I know it's going to make a mess, but Miltoniopsis are what I call a fragile plant. Get it wrong and it will keel over. And the most important thing with Miltoniopsis is to maintain a good root system. Well, to maintain one, you've got to start with one, haven't you? So I'm going to try and slip this. Oh, let's get that giant cane out. That's just the so that it doesn't roll around in the box cane, as opposed to the others that are supporting the spikes. Because most of that noise you can hear flapping around is the actual flaps on the two big fans, the inlet fan and the extractor fan. They're actually flappy things that when the fan turns on they move. They're just loose, flop around. That's why I have to block those up in the winter, otherwise all the cold air comes in. Right, I'm going to try and lift this out gently. It does feel quite loose, so it may well come out. Now the bottom has fallen off, so it's not an extensive root system. There's an awful lot of that media doesn't have any roots in it. And the media is very loose. That's fragile in that pot. That needs looking into relatively soon. It might mean it hasn't long been repotted, or potted up perhaps to sell. But that's not as good a root system as I would like to see, only because it's a Miltoniopsis. Right, I suppose we ought to try and get the others out of their pots. The trouble is this is bark, it's probably going to go all over the flipping place. Is it worth it? We'll just lift it gently a bit and see if it'll... Now there's an extensive root system there, but if I lift it out any further all the bark will fall off. And a lot of that bark is attached to those roots. So, and I suspect these have both come from the same place, and looking at the way the roots are around the top of the pot, that one's going to have good roots as well. The Dendrobium, I'm not going to be able to get that out of its pot until I actually mean it, you know, and actually take it out for good. So that's the 3 new plants, and I should have known, but I need to take care when I buy new plants from now on to consider the size of the plant, because although I've just got rid of 15 plants, there weren't many of those that were very big. In fact, the 3 biggest ones were mounted plants, and they haven't freed up a lot of space really, and my shelf space is getting a little cluttered again. And buying big plants, it's like this Regnellii over here. You know, these spikes are nearly touching their roof and they're on my lowest shelf. The only shelf I've got lower than this one is this one. And this is a part workbench. It's not meant to be I know I use it to display plants, but I do use it as a workbench to put my plants on to drain after I've watered them. So I've got limited height in places, and both of these two, well, the 2 spectabilis, have height. The Regnellii is so tall because of the pot it's in. It's in a very tall pot, and that pot stood in a tray that is too small, so the pot's perched on it rather than sitting in it, if you know what I mean. So that's giving it height that maybe in the future I can drop down a bit. But this, you know, it is something to consider when you buy a plant, is can you accommodate its height, let alone its width. How big a pot is it? You know, how fast does it grow? How big is it going to get in the next couple of years? That's one thing to consider. But have you got the headroom? You know, that's quite important. So anyway, that's the 4 newbies. So that's 15 out the door, plus 3 that got thrown out. So that's, you know, that's heading towards 20 plants that have gone. And recently, probably about half that many have come back in as new plants. To sort of, I look at it as revitalising the stock, something new of interest that wasn't there before. So there we go, some more new plants. None of those plants were what I call expensive. I think the Dendrobium was a bit over £20, and the others weren't. The others were 16, something like that. And to get a Miltonia species in bloom that size for 16 quid, and in this case plus £2 shipping, can't be bad. You can't knock a supplier that's knocking that sort of stuff out at that price. So those that are knocking the same plants out at a lot more are ripping you off. These will have come from the same supplier, I suspect, the two Miltonias, possibly the Miltoniopsis as well, don't know. But these two will have come from the same place. That same place will have sold quite large numbers of those to several other places as well, I suspect, and they'll appear on their websites. And if they've got a picture, you'll be able to recognise them from the size and the shape of the pot, yeah? See how much they're charging. Plus, you know, as I say, there's quite a few of the EU nurseries. You know, they're charging, heading up towards 20 quid now for shipping. I've just bought a plant for that, including shipping. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.